many people are living under multiple layers of fear. One of those fears is about what happens if you acknowledge your doubts. And indeed, you are being encouraged to believe that what happens if you acknowledge your doubts is going to be dire. And we're not going to tell you that there are not serious consequences. There are, and we've experienced them. However, there is another side to the puzzle, which is how you will feel when your doubts are no longer a secret that you are afraid is going to be discovered. And that's what the quote from Catch-22 reveals.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do it. So this is from the middle of the book. I forgot the chapter. It's not Milo the Mayor. It's Nately's Old Man. Not reading the whole chapter, just about a page here. So this is a
You want me to set it up?
19. Yeah, go for it.
You want to set up the whole book?
Oh, sure.
No, I thought that's what you were about to do.
No, I was just going to set up the scene.
Okay, so the scene involves one of these young pilots. Pilots had a very, very dangerous role in World War II. A lot of them did not come back. Most of them did not come back. So it was a very terrifying thing. And this exchange takes place.
Hold on. So it's a piece of fiction, but Heller himself was he a bombardier? He was
I think he was
in
an
planes,
airman.
but I don't remember. Yeah.
In any case, the exchange takes place. Obviously, if you're a pilot, unless you're based on an aircraft carrier, you're based on land. But this is the equivalent of shore leave, where they've gone into Italy, and they're at the whorehouse. And the old man is the proprietor of the whorehouse, and I believe he's talking to Nately. Is that right?
Nately, yeah.
And Nately is a young gun, a 20-ish year old guy who is basically pontificating on his understanding of how the world works. And this extremely old man, the proprietor of a whorehouse who knows a whole lot about how the world actually works, responds and says all kinds of interesting, sometimes hilarious things. And anyway, this exchange takes place. Yeah,
I mean, it goes on for a long time. I'm just going to read the short little bit here. The old man says about someone who had risked his life. You see, imagine a man his age risking what little life he has left for something so absurd as a country. Nately was instantly up in arms again. There is nothing so absurd about risking your life for your country, he declared. Isn't there? Asked the old man. What is a country? A country is a piece of land surrounded on all sides by boundaries, usually unnatural. Englishmen are dying for England. Americans are dying for America. Germans are dying for Germany. Russians are dying for Russia. There are now 50 or 60 countries fighting in this war. Surely so many countries can't all be worth dying for. Anything worth living for, said Nately, is worth dying for. And anything worth dying for, answered the sacrilegious old man, is certainly worth living for. You know, you're such a pure and naive young man that I almost feel sorry for you. How old are you, 25, 26? 19, said Nately. I'll be 20 in January. If you live. The old man shook his head, wearing for a moment the same touchy, meditating frown of the fretful and disapproving old woman. They're going to kill you if you don't watch out, and I can see now that you are not going to watch out. Why don't you use some sense and try to be more like me? You might live to be 107 too. Because it's better to die on one's feet than to live on one's knee, Nately retorted with triumphant and lofty conviction. I guess you've heard that saying before. Yes, I certainly have, mused the treacherous old man, smiling again. But I'm afraid that you have it backwards. It is better to live on one's feet than die on one's knees. That is the way the saying goes. It is better to live on one's feet than die on one's knees.
That line has given me chills for, I don't know, 3 decades, 3.5 decades since I first read it. There's something about it. The idea that we have this thing encoded in our minds about, it's better to die on one's feet than live on one's knees. And that in fact, we don't even notice this other possibility, right? It's ruled out by the way that the initial thing is phrased. And the point is, well, I guess it's another version of Plato's cave in some sense, right? The idea that there's this other reality that you can't quite see, but if you knew what it was, you would value things very, very differently.
Well, and it raises questions of whether or not where you are at the moment, like, are you on your feet or are you on your knees? Like that is the sort of Plato's cave. What world is it? What looking glass have you or have you not gone through? What is your situation right now? How free are you?
Yeah, how free are you? And, it's funny, I have never thought of it this way before. I've long loved Catch-22. There's so much in it. It's so brilliantly done where, the wordplay is wonderful and the comedy is utterly hilarious and plenty dark and all of that. But, but I've never thought of it as a dystopian novel before. But I'm beginning to wonder, I'm hearing discussions about dystopia and about what we are facing. And I think everybody who gets it realizes it's not Orwellian. It's not Kafka, right? It's not Huxley. It's pieces of these things. It's a hybrid between these things, but the hybridization goes beyond those classics, right? It definitely extends to Brazil, right? There's an element about this that is
the movie. Yeah.
That is Brazil. Brazil, the movie, but also Catch-22, right? And I think the point is how many of these great texts or whatever they are, does one need to have a piece that covers all of the things that we're encountering? And then, I do long for a circumstance in which we have all had enough shared grounding that we can have the conversation, right? That you can say Kafka trap and it doesn't, leave a third of the audience wondering what the heck you're talking about.
Well, that of course is some of what, stereotypically conservatives bemoan about the loss of a classic great books curriculum, for instance, right? That there was a shared cultural set of knowledge that you could know if you were interacting with people from the same rough sort of cultural class. They would know. And frankly, this was also true about from our childhoods, like must-see TV. Right? Thursday night on NBC, everyone watched the same stuff such that if you had the kind of job that had a water cooler the next day, you all had seen, the Huxtables on the Cosby Show the night before, and you all could talk about these, fictional people who were imagined to be living lives, but they were as if friends. So your workplace brought together all these people who lived separate lives, but they had this shared thing that was brought into their homes every Thursday. And of course, both the loss of both classic traditional curricula and of television or other media that actually comes in at a particular moment as opposed to when it is that you have the time, both of which have reason. The reasons for the changes are not entirely bad. Right? And the changes themselves are, of course, not entirely bad, but there are trade-offs. And there is very little now that synchronizes us.
Well,
except for this forced consensus that we are told we are all synchronized. We all know that, the uns are dirty, right?
When we are synchronized by something that is the opposite of education, right? It is miseducation or something like it. I have to say that whenever you say curricula, I think of an academic vampire. I just can't help it. Curricula, yeah.
Female, presumably.
No, but that's better.
Oh, I guess Dracula is not female.
No. Yeah. Maybe he is now, but
perhaps.
Yes, perhaps.
Who's to say?
Dracula.
Only Dracula, yes. Lived experience being primal. Not primal.
It's unlived experience.
Oh boy. Yeah,
all right.
Good.
But
it's too late for Halloween. But,
yes.
We're there right in time for Thanksgiving.
Halloween is
the
coming.
Unlived experience.
Yes. All right. So the point I wanted to make, I have also made this point about, the shared
God doesn't play dice, but Fairfax does.
He sure does. He's now about to eat a rubber band. That could end badly.
What has gotten into all of us this week, really?
So I think the problem is the conservatives don't have it right. The great books curriculum is not the curriculum for modern times. Neither is the liberal arts grab bag. Right. And the point is, so
I don't know what you mean by the liberal arts grab bag.
I mean, as I've said a number of times, I think liberal arts is the central concept of liberal arts, which is basically an education that is not about training you, is correct. But that liberal arts itself,
it's about learning how to think and helping reveal to you what you can and cannot do. And
it is about upgrading the mind. And the problem with it is that upgrading the mind, gets into a question of, okay, what do we regard as an upgrade, right? And the point is, I would say any education that does not give you basic competence in scientific thinking and math is a failure, right? If a liberal arts education can include an education that doesn't have that, then it's a failed concept to me. But anyway, the point is, what we need is some sort of great book, some hybrid between a liberal arts style thinking, which is too flexible because it doesn't give us a shared set of concepts that allows us all to interact with the same baseline, right? And then the great books thing, the problem with that one is that it is too grounded at the moment that you declare these books great. And the point is the amount that we know about the universe is changing. And so what are the chances that that group of books that one most ought to prioritize is static? What it really is it has to be a dynamic frame that still prioritizes the sharedness. And, your point about must-see TV, I agree. And the point is, must-see TV, I don't think it was, it wasn't important. It wasn't good, but much more important than good is shared in some sense. And I've said this about books themselves, that in some sense, the important thing is that people have been run through the same experience so that they have a basis for interacting over it, rather than everybody having an a la carte experience, which can be a higher quality experience because it's tailored to you, but it means that, the us part doesn't work as well. So there is something to having at least, I've made the point that musically, the era of LPs and a small number of radio stations which dispensed music into your car and your house wasn't a natural moment, right? It seems more natural than our current moment, but no, it's just the moment we were born into. And the point was, though, that, there's nothing natural about having every radio station playing Stairway to Heaven during a particular month because it's the latest craze. But it did give, it meant that if you met somebody from a different high school, they were also having a piece of the same experience. It also allows you to place your memories in time later. Right. Stairway to Heaven was big when we were tiny kids. So, we weren't around for that moment. But there in the 80s when we were in high school, there was a soundtrack to that era that, frankly, a lot of retail stores are now playing. We are the target audience for a lot of retail stores, and it pulls you right back. Right. It builds you right back. And that is to some degree true now, of course. There's music coming out right now that will only ever have come out in 2021 because that's just what history and the truth of time and reality is. But there's so much of it, and it's so sort of desynchronized that there can't be a remember the month that all the radio stations were suddenly playing X, and also, the earthquake happened in Y, and that happens to be the month that I broke up with my first boyfriend. Or, oh, really? Because that was the month that I first tried sushi. Whatever it is, you can come together over okay, there are these universals, and they're not just an earthquake in Y. They're also things that actually tug at the deepest emotional truths, which is often music. Yeah. Right. And so we can synchronize with those things, even with people who we didn't know at the time, because they were experiencing the same thing, the same emotional thing, the same musical thing at the time. And that is one of the desynchronizations, and therefore I think the decoherences of modernity. Yes. With globalization of media and social media surpassing most other kinds. Well, we are seeing two things at once. We are seeing the market deliver, because markets feed individuals, because it is individuals usually who do the spending, right? It is feeding us something that tickles our particular fancy, which is separating us. It's decohering us. At the same time, it's dispensing mind-numbing narratives where there is nothing but questions to be asked. There's no question asked. And a narrative is dispensed as if it was obviously true. And anybody who departs from this has lost their frickin' mind, right? So it's the worst of both worlds,
yes.
right?
Yes,
we don't know each other well, and yet we all believe the same bullshit.